Have you ever noticed how the heart rarely craves what's steady, but always longs for what's uncertain? We're told that time heals all wounds, that love conquers everything, that chasing desire is the key to happiness. But what if that's a lie? What if chasing passion is sometimes the very thing that destroys us? The truth is, many people walk away from the arms that would never let them fall, only to be shattered by those who never care to catch them. It's a paradox no one wants to admit. We abandon the table already set for us, the roof built over us with sacrifice, the love that waits in silence, all for the illusion of a flame that often burns us to ash. Families are torn apart, hearts are broken, and respect is buried, not because of hate, but because of blindness. And when the smoke clears, when the passion fades, most discover too late what they traded away. This isn't just another story about leaving and returning. It's about the raw pain of walking through hunger, humiliation, and silence with the promise of love that never came. It's about the storm a single decision can unleash, and the miracle of finding arms still open when you no longer deserve them. And maybe, just maybe, it's about you, about that part of you that knows the cost of chasing the wrong dream. So stay with me, because the story I'm about to tell will make you question the choices you've made, the people you've left behind, and the love you might still be overlooking. You'll see yourself in every word, whether it's the one who left or the one who still waits. And when the last page turns, you'll understand that sometimes the greatest journey is not out there, but back home. Before we begin, let me remind you of something simple. If this story stirs your heart, if it reminds you of truths too often forgotten, don't forget to leave us a free tip, hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment. It costs nothing, but it means everything for stories like this to keep finding a place in the world. I once lived a life many could only dream of, land stretching beyond the horizon, cattle shining like living gold under the sun, and a barn so full it seemed impossible to ever run empty. Everywhere I went, there was abundance and the quiet echo of victory. People would ride miles just to shake my hand, to look at me as if I carried the secret to a blessed life. And I wore that respect like a crown, never questioning it. But deep inside, something restless began to stir. It always starts like that, not with thunder, but with a whisper that refuses to leave you alone. My days were measured by the rhythm of hooves and the scent of fresh hay, the kind of life that builds strong hands and a proud back. At dawn, I sat on my bay horse and rode across fields I thought would always be mine. In those moments, I felt untouchable, as if luck itself had chosen to dwell on my land. Younger men at the rodeo would lean in to hear my words, as though I carried the wisdom of old. Yet, even with the applause still echoing, there was a pair of eyes haunting me. Eyes I couldn't forget, eyes that promised more than all my wealth combined. People think success is enough to silence the hunger inside. It isn't. I had medals gleaming on my walls, trophies that spoke louder than any introduction, but at night I would look at the stars and feel something missing. Those who came to me for advice never saw the shadow behind my smile, the ache gnawing at my chest. It was like a splinter buried too deep to pull out, small, invisible, but unbearable. If you've ever had everything yet still felt hollow, you know exactly the place where I stood. And I was there, trembling between staying or surrendering to a force I couldn't name. Life doesn't always test you by taking things away. Sometimes it tests you by showing you what else could be yours. The night I saw her, those eyes, blue as the moonlight resting on still waters, my world shifted forever. I didn't know her story, but I knew mine could no longer remain the same. It's wild, isn't it? How a single glance can make you doubt everything you built with your own hands. Have you ever felt that? That sudden pull, as if gravity itself called you by name? That's what I felt, stronger than the applause, stronger than the soil beneath my boots. I tried to dismiss it, convincing myself it was just a spark, nothing more. But the harder I fought it, the deeper it dug into me. I stopped talking so much at the rodeos. My laughter faded at the dinners, and the barn that once felt like a kingdom began to look like a prison. People still came to hear my words, but my voice betrayed me, distracted, distant. That longing was winning, and I knew it. A choice was coming, one I couldn't escape, one that would cost me more than my trophies, more than my name. And each night, the weight of that choice pressed heavier on my chest. I remember the night I told my father, "I'm leaving." His eyes froze, as if he hadn't understood the words. But I knew he had. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm I had ever faced in the arena. I tried to explain how those blue eyes had captured me, how life here, no matter how rich, suddenly felt empty without her. But how do you make a man who built his life from the ground up understand why his son would throw it all away for a feeling? Even I couldn't explain it, not fully. His hands, rough from years of work, trembled as he held the pipe he never smoked. He had taught me discipline, pride, and loyalty, yet there I was, breaking all three in one breath. Without her, I can't stay, I whispered, though the words tasted like betrayal. I knew he wanted to stop me, to say that love comes and goes, but he also knew that no chain could hold a man already walking away in his heart. That was the last night I sat at that table as the son he admired. The morning I left, the fields looked different. The sun rose just the same, but it felt like it was watching me abandon everything it once blessed me with. My bay horse carried me out of the gates I once swore I'd never leave. Behind me was the smell of fresh bread, the sound of cattle lowing, and the laughter of men who believed I'd always stand among them. Ahead of me was only uncertainty, and her. I didn't even know if I'd find her, yet I knew I had no choice. That's the madness of desire. It burns logic until nothing is left but fire. As I rode further, doubts chased me like shadows. What if she wasn't waiting? What if she never even thought of me again? But love doesn't leave space for rational questions. It tricks you into believing that even the impossible is worth chasing. I told myself that men are measured not by what they keep, but by what they're willing to risk. Still, with every mile, I felt the weight of what I had thrown away. Every fence I crossed seemed to whisper, "You'll regret this." And deep down, I already knew. That night, I stared at the stars on the side of the road, my body aching from the ride. I should have felt free, but freedom tasted bitter. I was no longer the man of trophies and cattle. I was just a fool chasing shadows. Yet my heart wouldn't let me turn back. Sometimes you know the road ahead will destroy you, and still, you walk it. I was already walking with death at my side, though I didn't call it by name yet. And step by step, I drifted further from who I had been, into the unknown that awaited me. The road turned colder the further I went, and it wasn't just a wind cutting through my coat. It was a silence, the kind that gnaws at a man's bones. I had once walked beside fortune, but now misfortune sat at my table, uninvited yet refusing to leave. Hunger crept in first, sharper than any blade. And then came the loneliness, heavier than the saddle on my tired horse. I wasn't just leaving home anymore. I was drifting into the arms of something darker. They say death doesn't always come with a gunshot or a scream. Sometimes it walks quietly at your side. I started gambling with shadows, taking chances I never would have dared before. Sleep on the wrong street, trust the wrong stranger, drink from a cup you couldn't pay for. It didn't matter. When a man has nothing left to lose, he becomes his own executioner. I had food some days, but more often I had nothing, and every empty plate felt like a sermon on the choices I had made. I had once been celebrated, yet now I begged with eyes that no one wanted to meet. Do you know that look? The one that makes people turn away, as if your ruin could be contagious? Nights grew longer, crueler. I slept in barns not my own, sometimes not even barns at all, just under the sky, where the earth is my bed and the wind is my blanket. My hands, once calloused by hard but honest work, now trembled as they reached for scraps thrown aside. There's a certain humiliation that comes when you taste the bread others refuse. They call it the bread of the devil. And believe me, it's not the taste but the shame that lingers. I was eating survival, and every bite reminded me I was no longer the man my father raised. There were moments I almost laughed at the cruelty of it all. To go from applause to mockery, from a champion to a vagabond. It was as if fate itself enjoyed pulling the rug from under me. And yet, in that cruel dance, I saw truth. People respect you when you're winning, but when you fall, the crowd doesn't just vanish. They celebrate your downfall in silence. I had lived long enough to see admiration turn to indifference, and indifference is sharper than hate. Hate at least remembers you. Indifference forgets you exist. Still, even at my lowest, her eyes wouldn't let me go. Blue, luminous, eternal. They followed me into dreams, into hunger, into every alley where death offered me its hand. I had nothing left, yet I clung to that memory like a lifeline. And maybe that's why I didn't let the darkness finish its work. Because somewhere in the dust, in the shame, and in the gnawing hunger, I still believe I might find her again. And so, even walking hand in hand with death, I kept moving forward, blind to the storm waiting just ahead. After endless roads, I stumbled into a bar one rainy night, the kind of place where the light is dim and hope feels unwelcome. My boots dragged mud across the floor and heads turned, not out of respect, but curiosity mixed with disgust. I was no longer the man they once spoke with pride. I was just another shadow passing through. And yet, in that cloud of smoke and laughter, I saw them, the eyes I had chased across deserts of despair. Blue, radiant, just as I remembered, but not looking at me. She was laughing, her hand resting on another man's arm, her glass raised high as though the world had never wounded her. That laugh pierced me deeper than any hunger ever had. For years, I had fed myself on the memory of her smile, believing it was mine to reclaim. And there she was, smiling freely, as if my suffering had never existed. I froze, unable to step closer, as though an invisible hand had pinned me to the ground. Some truths don't arrive gently. They crash through the door and leave you breathless. I wanted to scream her name, to remind her the fire that once consumed me, but no sound left my throat. My pride was ashes, my heart a battlefield where rage and longing tore each other apart. Do you know what it's like to realize the person you sacrificed everything for has already moved on? It's a kind of death you die standing, your eyes open, your heart still beating. I had left behind trophies, respect, even family, and she had left me behind without hesitation. The man beside her raised his glass, and in that moment I saw what I truly was, an intruder in a story that no longer belonged to me. My fingers clenched, nails biting into my skin, and for the first time in my life, I felt powerless. Not the kind of powerless you feel when you lose a fight, but the kind that whispers you never mattered as much as you thought. I stumbled back into the shadows, unseen, my chest heavy with a silence louder than any gunshot. I left that bar with my soul shattered, each step echoing like a drumbeat of shame. Outside, the rain masked the tears I could no longer hold back. The world had shown me its cruelest trick. Sometimes the person you give everything to never even ask for it. And as the night swallowed me whole, I realized there was only one road left, the road back home. Yet even that thought carried its own terror, for I didn't know if home would still open its doors to a broken man like me. I walked away from that bar with nothing but the echo of her laughter burning in my ears. Each step felt like a confession, like I was dragging chains behind me. For the first time, I realized that the road I had chosen was not leading me forward. It had been circling me back to the very place I had abandoned. Shame and regret clung to me like a second skin, and yet there was a strange pull guiding me toward home. Not hope, not certainty, just a desperate need to be somewhere I once belonged. The journey back was lonelier than the one that led me away. Before, I carried desire like a torch, but now all I carried was the ashes of a dream. The villages I passed seemed colder, the faces of strangers sharper, as if they could read the mistakes carved into my soul. I avoided their eyes, keeping my head down, afraid they might see the truth, that I was a man who had traded gold for dust. My horse was gone, my pride broken, and the road stretched endlessly, whispering questions I had no answer for. At night, I would lie beneath the stars and wonder if my family even spoke my name anymore. Did my father curse me? Did my mother's prayers turn to silence? And my brothers, were they waiting to spit at the sight of me, or had they already forgotten I existed? The thought gnawed at me, and yet, the closer I came, the harder it was to turn back. Isn't it strange? We fear the rejection of those we love, yet still we crawl to them, because even rejection from them feels better than the emptiness we find elsewhere. The landscape I once knew so well began to rise before me again. Hills I had raced over as a boy, trees I carved my name into. They stood as silent witnesses to my downfall. Every step closer to home made my heart pound harder, not with excitement, but with dread. What if the doors were shut? What if my return brought only shame upon their name? These thoughts tore at me, But still I walked, because even a broken man longs for the arms that first held him. And then on the horizon, I saw it, the outline of my home. My legs trembled, my breath caught, and for a moment I wanted to collapse right there in the dust. Tears welled up, blurring the view I had dreamed of in hunger and misery. That house was no longer just a place. It was judgment, redemption, and punishment all in one. With every step closer, the silence of the past years screamed louder inside me. And yet, I couldn't stop because the truth, whatever was, waited just beyond that gate. The closer I came to the house, the heavier my steps became. My chest pounded as if each heartbeat were asking the same question. Will they still call me son? I could see the fence I once mended with my own hands, now weathered by years I had thrown away. My throat tightened. Every mistake, every shameful night, every broken promise seemed to rise up and march beside me. It wasn't just a walk toward home. It was a walk into judgment. I stopped at the gate, my fingers trembling on the wood. Memories flooded me, sharp and unforgiving. My father's firm voice teaching me how to be a man, my mother's gentle hands healing the wounds of my reckless childhood, my brothers laughing as we raced through the fields. I had traded all of that for a pair of blue eyes, and now I stood here with nothing to offer but a scarred soul. How do you face the ones who gave you everything, after proving yourself unworthy of their trust? Each step down that familiar path was agony. I expected the dogs to bark, the doors to slam shut, or perhaps the silence to swallow me whole. I imagined my father's face carved from stone, my mother turning away, my brothers spitting the word traitor under their breath. Shame burned hotter than the midday sun, and I wanted to vanish into the ground before I even reached the porch. It's a cruel thing when home itself feels like a battlefield. Tears blurred my sight, dripping into the dust beneath my feet. That dust seemed to rise up and mock me, whispering of the boy I used to be. Once I had returned from rodeos to cheers, medals in hand, a family proud to call me theirs. Now I returned empty-handed, malnourished, broken, a stranger wearing my own face. I wonder if they would even recognize me, or if the years had erased every trace of the son they once loved. And then, through the blurred tears, I saw a movement at the door. My heart stopped. A figure stepped out, broad shoulders, arms weathered by decades of labor, a stance I knew too well. My father. He didn't speak at first. He just looked. That silence stretched into eternity, crushing me with the weight of his gaze. I wanted to run, to beg, to collapse, but I couldn't move. And in that stillness, the world itself seemed to hold its breath. My father stood there, his shadow stretching across the yard, like a wall I wasn't sure I could climb. His arms were crossed at first, his face carved with lines that told the story of every season I had missed. I froze where I was, my feet sinking into the dust, as if the earth itself wanted to keep me from taking another step. My lips parted, but no words came. All I could think was, this is the man I betrayed, and the silence between us screamed louder than any accusation. Behind him, the door creaked open again, and I saw the faint silhouette of my mother. Her hand clutched the frame, as if holding on to it kept her standing. Even from that distance, I could see the glimmer of tears in her eyes, though I didn't know if they were for joy, sorrow, or disappointment. My chest ached. I wanted to run into her arms like I did as a boy, but shame held me still. It's strange. The closer you are to what you've lost, the more impossible it feels to reach out for it. The yard around us was silent, except for the distant cry of a crow and the faint creak of the old windmill turning. I felt the air grow heavy, pressing down on me with every heartbeat. My brothers might have been inside, watching, waiting to see if the prodigal son would be cast out or forgiven. That thought twisted inside me, and I lowered my eyes, unable to meet my father's stare. My pride had died long ago, but this moment felt like its funeral. I wanted to speak, to beg for forgiveness, but my throat closed tighter with every attempt. What words could ever erase the years of absence, the shame, the rumors they must have endured because of me? My hands shook at my sides, filthy and scarred, reminders of the road I had chosen. I whispered a broken, "I'm sorry," that barely reached my own ears. My father didn't move, didn't speak. He just looked at me, as though weighing every sin against every memory of the boy I once was. Time slowed to a crawl. A bead of sweat slid down my temple, mixing with the tears I couldn't hold back anymore. Each second stretched into eternity, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. My father's jaw tightened, his chest rose with a deep breath, and for one terrifying moment, I believed he would turn his back on me. And if he did, I knew I would crumble where I stood. But just as despair began to claim me, I saw his arms slowly start to move. His arms opened wide, not with hesitation, but with a force that shattered the weight of every silent second between us. I fell forward before I even realized my body was moving, my knees nearly giving way as I stumbled into his chest. The smell of sweat and earth clung to him, the same scent that had carried me through childhood, and in that moment, it felt like coming back to life. His arms wrapped around me with the strength of a man who had built walls, yet never locked a gate. I couldn't hold it in. The sobs broke free, raw and unashamed. My face pressed into his shoulder, and the tears poured like rain on dust, soaking the shirt of the man who still dared to call me son. He didn't scold me, didn't question me, didn't list the things I had ruined. He simply held me, as if his embrace could erase every mile I had wandered, every shame I had carried. And for the first time in years, I let myself believe I wasn't lost anymore. Behind us, I heard the faint sound of my mother's cry, not the cry of sorrow, but the cry of release. Her hands covered her face as she stepped closer, and though I couldn't see her clearly through the blur of my tears, I felt her presence like a soft light returning to a darkened room. My brothers emerged as well, their steps hesitant, their eyes unreadable, but none of them interrupted the moment. It was as if time itself had paused to witness a resurrection. In my father's arms, the hunger, the humiliation, the nights of despair began to dissolve. I had carried death like companion. But here, in this embrace, I felt life surge back into me. Every mistake still existed, every scar still burned, but now there were no longer weights dragging me down. They were proof of the road that had brought me home. And though my chest still ached, it was not from shame, but from the overwhelming relief of being welcomed. As he pulled back, his rough hands gripped my shoulders, his eyes, one so stern, glistened with tears. "My son has returned," he said, his voice steady yet trembling with emotion. Those words struck me harder than any punishment could have. In that single sentence, he rewrote my story, not as a vagabond who left, but as a son who found his way back. And with those words, the house behind him seemed to breathe again, as if waiting to celebrate a peace that none of us thought we'd ever see. The news of my return spread faster than the wind, carried by whispers that became shouts across the valley. Within hours, neighbors began to arrive, some disbelieving, others curious, and many simply grateful to witness what they thought would never happen. My father had announced it himself, not in secret, not in shame, but with pride, his voice echoing across the fields. "My son has come home." And with those words, the house that once echoed with silence now pulsed with music, laughter, and life. For 3 days and 3 nights, the celebration did not stop. The old bell in the chapel tower rang, announcing not just my return, but the rebirth of peace within our family. Tables that once bore the weight of harvest now overflowed with bread, wine, and roasted meats. The same neighbors who had once whispered about my downfall now raised their glasses in my honor. It was strange, almost surreal, to see the same people who had buried me in rumors now welcoming me back as if nothing had been broken. Children danced barefoot in the yard, their laughter mixing with the music of fiddles and accordions. My brothers stood close by, at first guarded, their pride still wrestling with old wounds, but even they couldn't resist the tide of joy. One by one, their arms reached for me, a pat on the back, a handshake, even a rough embrace that carried more forgiveness than words ever could. It was as if the entire town had chosen, together, to write a new chapter for me, one stained not by exile but by redemption. I sat at the table beside my father, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an intruder. He laughed, his booming voice filling the room, telling stories of my childhood as if to remind everyone that before the shame, before the wandering, I had been his son, and always would be. My mother's hands, busy serving food, trembled each time they brushed against my shoulder, as if she couldn't quite believe I was real. and I let her touch linger, because it grounded me in the truth that I was finally home. Yet, amid all the music and celebration, my heart carried a quiet weight. The blue eyes that had led me astray still haunted my memory, a reminder of the price I had paid to stand here again. But now, surrounded by family, embraced by forgiveness, I understood something I had never seen before. True love was not in the eyes of a stranger, but in the arms of those who never stopped waiting. And as the bell continued to ring, I realized the feast wasn't just about me. It was about the peace that had finally returned to us all. As the last echoes of the celebration faded, I sat alone beneath the stars, letting the silence wash over me. The laughter of the past 3 days still lingered in the air, but now it mixed with a deeper realization. I had wandered the world chasing a love that never existed, sacrificing everything for a dream that turned into dust. Yet the arms that once cradled me as a child had opened again without hesitation. In that moment, I understood family isn't perfect, but it is the only love that never bargains with you. When I left, I believed passion was worth more than roots, that the fire of desire would keep me warm when everything else failed. But the truth is cruel. Passion fades, illusions betray, and people you idolize may never hold you in their hearts the way you hold them in yours. I had gambled with my life for eyes that never truly saw me, and in the end, I was broken, starving, forgotten. Only then did I realize that what I had abandoned was the only treasure I ever needed. It's strange, isn't it? In today's world, people still make the same mistake. They leave behind mothers who pray for them, fathers who sacrifice, siblings who would share their last meal, all to chase someone who barely notices their absence. Social media is full of it. Stories of people who abandon their roots for a fleeting romance, only to find themselves alone when the illusion crumbles. We dress it up as freedom, as choice, but often it is just blindness. And when the lights go out, the only home waiting for us is the one we once turned away from. Family isn't just blood. It's the place where forgiveness breathes, even when we don't deserve it. It's the arms that open not because we've earned them, but because love doesn't need a reason. I learned it the hardest way, through hunger and humiliation. But maybe that's why the lesson carved itself so deep into me. The world can strip you of titles, wealth, and applause, but it cannot take away the bond of family that refuses to stop calling you their own. That is the anchor in every storm. As I lay my head down that night, the noise of the feast finally gone, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not the peace that comes from winning or from being admired, but the peace of belonging. I had wandered in search of something that was beside me all along. And if there's one truth my journey can teach, it's this. Love outside may falter, but the love of family will always be the harbor where even the most broken ship can dock and be made whole again. And now it's your turn to reflect. How many times have you seen someone abandon everything, respect, stability, even family, for a love that was never returned? Maybe you've lived it yourself, or maybe you've been the one left behind, watching someone you love disappear chasing a dream that crumbled. The truth is sharp. Illusions fade, but family never stops being the harbor waiting for us. So tell me, what part of the story spoke to you the loudest? Was it the hunger of chasing the wrong path, or the miracle of arms that still opened wide despite betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments, because your voice matters here. And don't hold back. Tell us which song you'd like to see transformed into a story next time. After all, music is full of truths waiting to be revealed in ways we've never heard before. If this story made you think, cry, or even smile at a reminder of what truly lasts, then I invite you. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell. Not because it's routine, but because this is just the beginning. There are countless songs, countless untold stories, and each one carries a lesson powerful enough to change the way we see life. Here, we don't just listen to music. We live it, we feel it, and we uncover the hidden heartbeat behind every lyric. Stay with us, because the next story might just be the one that feels like it was written about you. And remember, while the world might forget you, family will always wait to welcome you home.